Hello, you're welcome to Crine's Chockheol. My name is Liam Crine, and today we have a little treat for you with some musicians that play here on a regular basis. We have Clare, Daithi, John and Dylan, and they're going to play a selection of tunes. I'm going to hand you over to Daithi there, and he's going to talk a bit about the first selection that they're going to play, and I'll get out of your way. So I hope you enjoy the tunes. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Well, it's such a great pleasure to be back here in Crine's, and as Liam was saying, we've all more or less grown up playing here and learned the sight of music and a sight more besides, which we better not be talking about today. But it's great to be here, but we're going to start off with a set of reels anyway that will be very associated with the great playing of the Sligo fiddle player Michael Coleman, Lord MacDonald's and the Ballina Slow Fare. Two great old reels, and reels we've all been playing a lot, and whenever I play Lord MacDonald's I always think of that great Leitrim fiddle player Ben Lennon. I'm sure Dylan and Clare, you both would have known Ben, and John as well. Ben was a lovely man who just passed away at just February or March last year, and he was a real gentleman and so encouraging to young musicians, and he was a real, I suppose he was nearly from several generations ago. He was so dapper and so encouraging and so thought-provoking when you talk to him about music or about anything else. And as a lot of people will know, his brother Charlie is a well-known tune composer, and I asked Ben one time if he ever composed a tune, and he says no, but I'm slowly decomposing. You would probably have memories of growing up playing with Ben, John.
Yeah, when I used to play the fiddle before I give into the dark side, my first outing and knowledge of Ben, obviously I knew who the Lennons were because Morris would have been a bit of a hero. He had won the All-Ireland, he was playing with Stockton's wing, and we were all very aware of Morris. But I met Ben the first year of the Mooney Summer School, in the Joe Mooney Summer School in Drumshambo, and I went to the fiddle class, and there were 6 of us. That's how many was in the fiddle class that year, and Ben was the teacher. And from the first day I met him, he was the most positive character you could ever meet. Never had a bad word to say about anybody. If Ben didn't like you, he would have some sort of passive comment. Would be the worst. Would be the worst you would ever hear from him. Always encouraging a good music. I do remember actually when I was chairman of the council here, Ben was asked to play at something in Croke Park, a Leitrim People's Association, and Ben, he said, "Will the chair be there?" He was told he will, and he says, "Tell him to bring the guitar." And Ben made a speech on the night about what he learned as a draper, and he said about, you could tell a lot about a man by the suit he was wearing. And he said, if the buttonhole on the lapel of the suit was hand stitched, you knew that was a man of substance. And as he was telling that, he reached over and he grabbed the lapel of my suit jacket, and he just looked at it and left it back with a sort of a blank look on his face. He didn't say anything, but there was a great cheer from the audience because they knew my buttonhole wasn't hand stitched.
Brilliant. He was great. We'd better continue with another set of tunes.
Go with a couple of jigs. Another 2 jigs that are associated with kind of the Coleman archives, the Coleman recordings. A lot of the tunes we're playing today are from those recordings of tunes we'd have, the staple tunes that we'd have grown up playing, especially here in Crines. So 2 jigs, Cherish the Ladies, or Perish the Ladies as Patsy Hanley likes to call it, and Tell Her I Am. So let's see how these go.
Lovely. Whenever I play Tell Her I Am, I'd always think of Kevin O'Brien. Kevin was a great box player. And this was one of the great things about coming to Cryans for all of us. You met so many different people. And like you'd never know who was going to drop in. But Kevin was a man who used to be here occasionally. He died a few years ago. He was from Leitrim, but he lived in Sligo. But he was great crack. But whenever he'd play Tell Her I Am, he'd say, "Tell her feckin' nothing."
Right. We're up next, Claire.
Yeah, good stuff. So myself and Dylan, we're going to play a 5-part jig. It's called Jackson's Rolling Jig. I suppose where I got this tune first. Where I got this tune first was actually through playing with a Cayley band in Gortlettra back when I was 12, 13, 14, all throughout my teenage years really. Daithi, we probably came up against the Sligo bands at the time. But we'd always get up and we'd play these beautiful tunes from the Stephen Greer manuscripts. Father Quinn from Gortlettra was in charge of the bands at the time, and he'd always pull out lovely tunes for us to play. So this one, Jackson's Rolling Jig, it appears in the Stephen Greer manuscripts as a 5-part jig, but incidentally it also appears in O'Neill's 1001 as a 2-part jig, and I also play that version, and Dylan actually heard me play that version in here one night and recorded it on an album with himself and John here and
Interestingly,
Cian
you didn't
Sweeney.
tell me about the 5th part until after we recorded it.
Yeah, this
Anyway.
week I think.
Lucky you.
So actually, this 5-part version that we're going to play, it only appears in the Stephen Greer manuscripts. That this 5th part, it doesn't appear in any other versions that have been transcribed of this tune. So, shall we give it a go, Dylan?
See how it goes.
Short jigs like that.
Nice handy ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Where would you first have learned your music, Claire?
Well, I first learned with Conor Ward. He was my first fiddle teacher. I suppose my music playing came about how I suppose a lot of musicians start all around the country. There was an ad for a fiddle teacher in the Leitrim Observer and it was in the local hall up the road, so we said let's get a fiddle. So we went up to Longford, to the little music shop that was in Longford at the time, and got my first little tiny half-size fiddle. I think Irene Guckian, the fiddle player, was working in the shop at the time. She actually had a hand in selling me my first fiddle. So I would have learnt off Conor Ward, and Conor has done a lot of work on those Greer manuscripts, as you know, working on kind of bringing the tunes to the fore, I suppose, and making sure that they continue to be played, because they're an important part of that kind of South Leitrim, North Longford kind of tradition. But over the years, I suppose I would have learned a lot of music as well. At the summer schools, so John mentioned earlier, I think a lot of us would have gone to the likes of the Joe Mooney summer school over the years, and I was actually lucky enough, coming back to Ben Lennon, I was lucky enough to attend what was his very last year teaching at the Joe Mooney summer school. It was probably around 2007 or 2008. And John said there was six in the class at the time you went. There must have been 40 of us that year, all in the room for Ben's last year teaching. So I was actually thinking of playing a couple of tunes that I learned that year at the Joe Mooney, two nice reels. I suppose when we talk about archival material, I definitely have some archival material at home in the form of cassette tapes that I would have recorded my tunes on at the Joe Mooney back in those days. So I'll continue with a couple of reels that I would have learned from Ben Lennon at the summer school. The first one is Sporting Nell, and the second one is Sweeney's Dream.
We'll continue on a group set again with two reels that are associated with Leitrim flute player John Blessing. First one is Creamers and the second one is Buckley's Fancy. But I know you, John, you'd have known John personally growing up.
Yeah, I did. John Blessing was one of the first musicians proper that I ever played with. There was a woman in Ballinamore who took an interest in traditional music. She had lived in America all her life, Mary Ann McBrien, and I had no musical family as such. Yeah. There was nobody in my house played music. I was the only one, so she took pity on me and she brought me to a session in Eugene Quinn's pub in Fina, where I met John Blessing for the first time. It was 5 or 6 old men sitting round, and one thing I noticed about John Blessing straight away, first of all, was how, you know, I was only 14 or 15 years of age, young, loud, garish brat, and how welcoming Blessing was. very, you know, a very decent old gentleman. But he, I noticed the first tune I played was the lad OBrien, and he copped something about the way I rolled a part of it. And he used to always, when he'd see me, he'd sidle up to me and he'd go, dum dee doo. He'd always do that to me. So, and he was always wanted me to sit beside him, always wanted to hear what I was playing, always wanted to play with me, which I was amazed at, because he was, as I say, he was the first real good musician I'd played with. And he was always surrounded by lads who couldn't play anything. They were getting into the car with John Blesson and going to get free drink and to mime to John Blesson playing music. So I suppose he was glad to have somebody that knew a tune or two beside him. But I remember then when he got sick and John was in hospital, and with, you know, a couple of days before he died, myself and John Daly, a fiddle player that used to play here a lot, we went to see him, and I remember he looked out at me and he couldn't say my name, but he went, dum dee doo. That's the last time I met him.
Great. That's the great thing with music. Like, you meet people that you'd never have any hope of meeting at all
Yeah.
before.
Absolutely.
Or again. You know, it's great that way.
We'll give these a rattle. Now, Daithi, I think you're going to do a blast for us.
Yeah, I'll play a few reels. Suppose I was lucky enough to be born into a fairly musical family. My grandfather was a good accordion player, and my grandmother's family as well, on my father's side, were very musical, and a cousin of theirs was James Morrison, the famous fiddle player in America. But I would have learned an awful lot of my music from two great box players, PJ Hernan from Galway and Joe Burke would have been the major influence, who've just passed away recently. And Joe was a great window for me into the real golden age of Sligo fiddle playing in America. Joe lived in America in the early 60s, and while he wouldn't have known people like Morrison and Coleman, he did know Paddy Caloran, and he knew a lot of the people who knew them. So he was a great source of information and recordings and inspiration, I suppose, about that era of music, which I suppose is the era that really attracts me most. And even yet, it's pretty much nearly all I listen to. So I'll play a couple of reels that would have came from or through Joe. The first one is a version of a very well-known reel called the Flogging Reel. And it's a version that came from the great Sligo fiddle player Lad O'Byrne. Lad went to America in 1928, and he had a huge impact on the scene there up until his death in 1980. And the second one then is the Bunch of Keys. And this would be, I suppose, modelled on a version that really just came to light lately from a recording that came from Joe of Michael Coleman that was recorded in 1942 by Lad O'Byrne. And so I'll play these anyway, the Flogging Reel and the Bunch of Keys.
Lovely, excellent. I think you and Claire are going to go on with the set now. I'm having a very handy time of it. It's great.
Yeah, we'll try a lovely old barn dance. I suppose barn dances would be very associated with this part of the world and North Connacht's music in general. Would you agree, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. They're like barn dances. They have a lovely kind of rolling feel to them. North Connacht feel, I suppose. Yeah, so the Peach Blossom, I'm not sure where I learned the Peach Blossom first. It's a lovely fiddle tune.
Great tune, yeah. It was first recorded by James Morrison in about, I think it was 1936 he recorded. Beautiful old tune, but I think the person I remember playing it most is probably Ben Lennon, funnily enough. And I remember one time when we were talking about the Joe Mooney there, when I would have started going, very first, Joe Burke's room used to be right beside Ben's. And the first time I really remember hearing that tune was Ben teaching us and going out for the tea, and you could hear the fiddle music coming out into the hall of the vocational school, and it was just lovely.
Them all practicing it.
Them all practicing it, yeah. And we weren't as diligent. We trying to leap out the window. Lovely. I love that tune.
Yeah.
So
gorgeous.
simple but so nice.
Yeah.
I think you were going to play a few tunes, Dylan.
Oh, have a blast. Jeez, if I didn't know better, I'd say you were practicing.
You'd think. And where would you? Of course, you come from a very well-known musical family.
I suppose so. Yeah. It's kind of gas. I'm the disappointment in Roscommon because I'm a fiddle player. But no, I was reared on a high protein, low carb diet of flute playing in the Carless household. Father John would be a well-known flute player, and so growing up there, you had John Wynne, Patsy Hanley, Tommy Guihan.
Fluting royalty.
Right, absolutely. There's no other way to describe it. Fantastic flute players, and that's kind of where I got kind of my first taste, my first approach to music, and it's kind of something I've carried on, a very sort of straightforward, sort of rhythmic approach to music. And I know a great fiddle player from Roscommon as well, Enda McGreevy, described us as fiddle or flute players who just happen to play the fiddle. I know Enda would have taught me and Clare as well, so there's kind of a common link there. But I'll play two tunes that are in the kind of the Roscommon flute repertoire, that when you have a couple of flute players together, it's kind of 15 or 16 reels in G, and there's no messing. It's kind of, there's very little work for the guitar player to do. It's just, go ahead like. But yeah, play two reels, the Boys of Ballisadair and the Hare's Paw. We'll see how they go.
The rabbit's father.
The rabbit's father, that's right.
So, John, as someone, I'm putting you on the spot now, but as someone who has kind of played with multi-generations of music, and particularly musicians of the
Just
area.
a lovely way of saying he's old, but anyway.
Not at all. But like a lot of what we've been focusing on today is kind of on very much on the Leitrim, Sligo, North Roscommon style of music. And as someone who's played that, do you think kind of it's still as strong as it was, or has the music changed, or is it constantly changing and evolving, or what do you think?
Yeah, like it's a tricky question. Firstly, I do know I'm old because you're talking about people who taught you, and I consider them young fellas. And they're your teachers.
Yeah.
So, the music has definitely changed, but not for the worse. You know, and it's lovely to pay homage to what went before us, and it's lovely to recognise where we got it from. It's lovely to recognise the custodians that held on to it when it was difficult to hold on to, because there was no CDs, there was no digital sharing, there was no, people didn't move or travel. So those people did a huge service to our generation and to your generation in preserving all of that and creating a lot of it. But I'll tell you, it's in better hands now than it has ever been, certainly in my lifetime. There are more good musicians now than ever there were. There's more good music being played than ever there was, and it's institutions like Liam Cryan's Chop Ceol that are at the centre of all of that, welcoming and encouraging and giving a place for musicians to share and to enjoy music together. So yeah, I've seen a few generations, but there's never been one as good as this.
Thanks, John.
Great endorsement, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, you're right there. It's very hard to overestimate the influence a place like Cryan's has on a region, not just a musician. And like, would any of us be even acquaintances if it hadn't really been for Cryan's?
Probably
Think of the
not,
amount of
no.
people
That's
that
it.
we've
Yeah.
met. And funny enough, like Dylan, I knew your father long before I knew you.
There you go,
And
yeah.
mostly from here.
Exactly.
So like, when I was about 15, I started coming up, and Oliver Loughlin and Damien O'Brien used to be playing, and they'd have tunes that nobody'd have, like, and you'd go home and your head would be bursting, like,
Yeah,
trying
exactly.
to learn them. So it's very important to have a place like this, and as a real, not just a place to learn music, but as a forum for discussing music. And we're having a chat about it today, but this is what happens here every Thursday and Saturday and Sunday night.
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely,
it's part of the life of Cryan's, and huge that is thanks to Liam. And without people like Liam,
Yeah.
where would music in the region be now?
Yeah.
It's so important.
When this lockdown is over, we're going to pull the door jams off coming in, Liam. We want to put a cattle crush up to the bar.
Have the porter lined. No better man to do it. We'll play a couple of tunes.
Oh, give it a
this
go.
time, Dylan. And we played an awful lot of tunes, but I don't think we played any Leitrim composed tunes yet.
No, not as
But
such, no.
luckily enough, it's composed in Leitrim, but it's about Sligo. So
Oh, about the nightclub.
it's about the nightclub, yeah. It's a tune composed by a great fiddle player and composer who came from Killargy, a place called Liddy's Cross. His name was Joe Liddy, and he had a huge influence on the music scene in Dublin. He was a guard, and he was based around Monkstown, I think, or somewhere like that. But he composed an awful lot of tunes, must be nearly 100 tunes, I suppose, he
so, yeah.
composed.
Yeah.
But this is a lovely tune that he composed called the Gara Vogue. The Gara Vogue is a river that runs through Sligo, and a very infamous nightclub that we've all seen far too many times. And we followed that then with a lovely reel called The Girl That Broke My Heart, and no better place for it than Cryan's. But it's a tune that I had kind of forgotten about lately, but I got a recording lately of Frankie Gavin and Joe Burke playing us with Charlie Lennon in the, I think about 1987. It was just outrageous playing. It kind of put us into my head today anyway. I put us into Dylan's.
Exactly. Great tunes, excellent. Now, sure, we'll finish off. We'll finish off with two reels, two more Coleman reels. I'm reminded of my partner in crime in Crines for, I suppose, 10 odd years. Mick Mulvey would always start the set, or start the night with this set. The Boys of the Loch and the Devils of Dublin. I know these are two from Coleman as well, aren't they?
Coleman, yeah. Probably two of his most popular ones.
Absolutely, yeah. Two flutes and fiddles, or two fiddle players get together, generally played these tunes. So we hope you enjoyed our bit of a chat and a few tunes, and sure, we'll go out with these.
And it was great to catch up and just to be able to play a tune. It must be a year and a half since
of
us stood here, you know, and to hardly go a month and a half one time.
Exactly.
You're the best musicians I played with all week.
That's a McCartin compliment, so write that one down.
And just to say thanks very much to Liam for hosting us today.
Absolutely,
And thanks to the doc for putting it together, and the great camera crew and sound crew. Without them, we wouldn't look and sound half as good.
And God on lights.
And in her absence, Siobhan O'Malley for contacting us and getting this all together as well. So massive thanks to her.
Woo!